This will be the All Bosses run for ICEY Submission Run. We start by selecting the Lost Woods. Estimate of 25 minutes, as you can see. 3, 2, 1, go.
ICEY has left the laboratory. She understands that
ICEY is a sci-fi themed side-scrolling hack and slasher.
To stop ICEY. Kill them.
This is the NG Plus All Bosses run. You can see me there using a few abilities that they're not strictly speaking NG Plus abilities, but you would not have them at this point in a first playthrough.
Reaches a quiet hill, illuminated by light.
You can hear this game also has a narrator.
She is at peace.
The narrator is very much like that of the Stanley Parable, in that you can do what he says or not do what he says, and interesting things happen if you don't. But we don't really worry about that too much in a speedrun. We just do the side-scrolling hack and slashing, because that's fast and stylish. I just love the visual style of this game.
There seems to be a console that will act... What? How did...
There's a minor example of defying the narrator. He expects us to activate a console to create a light bridge that spans a gap, but instead we can just dash in midair over it. And that's one of the easiest movement optimizations you can do in this game, is dashing in midair rather than on the ground, because there's no... I don't know what you would call it, recovery frames, but there's no time in between. Like, you see how slow this dashing is? We're stuck here for a moment anyway, as opposed to this dashing, which you can just do endlessly. Now, there's a route divergence from any percent, otherwise known as Judas ending, not a category name I particularly like. In the any percent, we would not come to this area, because you can progress to the end of the game without coming here. See those energy crystals? You absorb them with the X button and release them for an AoE attack. Many screens have skippable combat. That one certainly does. This one certainly does not. A lot of the damage in this game is pretty well scripted. Deadly discs and AoEs. Now, by following the arrow, you would unlock the enhanced dash, and not only do we not do it in NG Plus categories, we would not do it in the NG category either, because when you unlock the upgrade that comes after it, the game assumes you have that one. So it's just always optional. But since this is all bosses, we do need to do the boss of this area. Gorger. Many of the bosses for this game do look very similar. This guy looks very similar to a later boss called Carlos. Honestly, you just do Deadly Disc in his face and don't get hit by a saw, and that's all you need. And he's dead. Just that quickly. You could also absorb the energy crystals and do an AoE, but Deadly Disc alone is enough.
ICEY defeats Gorger and senses ICEY arrives at an unnamed town. ICEY searches around the house for a trace of someone. A mark of... ICEY decides to head deeper into town. ICEY ignores the warehouse in the distance and continues to follow the arrow.
That little robot there is your upgrade station, but this is NG+. I already have all the upgrades. Next boss, Thor. This boss is optional. Even in a first playthrough, this boss would be optional, although you would most likely find him and kill him. just that quick to take care of Thor.
As ICEY defeats Thor, the gates to Ultimopolis slide open.
One potential way I may have seen this game be included is if you do choose to do any percent with an all bosses like donation incentive. I think that could be a lot of fun. Because the runs are pretty similar, but all bosses definitely gives you more of a good speed game. And it really is the speed that makes me love this game so much. The speed and the style. You can't play this game slowly. It's inherently a fast game.
She must always follow the arrow. Otherwise, she will be lost.
Trying to jump and dash in midair, because that is faster than dashing on the ground. Sometimes the game doesn't hear you jump.
To take a look inside.
There's Puck, again, also known as Parker for some reason. Just gotta get right up on his grill and do Deadly Disc. And the AoE with the energy crystals takes away a good quarter of his health on its own. Couple more Deadly Discs, or just one actually, and he's dead.
Oh? A dead end? That's not right. There shouldn't be a dead end.
And again, the narrator, oh no, there's a dead end here.
There should be a...
We're gonna program a new area.
ICEY continues to look deeper into the tunnels.
And there are actually all sorts of, like, combos you can learn. Heavy and light combos and all that. But everything pales in comparison to Deadly Disc. It really does.
ICEY follows the arrow. She knows that she will find Judas soon.
The only downside to Deadly Disc is sometimes you will do too much damage and you won't be able to spawn the energy crystals that let you do an AoE attack. So you do kind of have to keep an eye on it. Like it happened there. Nope, not there. Though actually the War Record, I believe, does go in there briefly to just like reset his charges for the dash. And anytime you enter a boss battle, your health and shield are fully replenished. There's Carlos, he looks very much like Gorger. What? Okay, that was strange. I didn't do the death blow. I thought I did. Carlos has 2 HP bars. Most bosses have multiple. There is one who only has 1. The final boss has 5, but he's less scary than that makes it sound.
Another challenge defeated. ICEY enters a metro.
And this is a unskippable 40-second long, you can kind of call it a cutscene, but you have control. This is obviously masking a load, and should the game have a good fortune of being chosen, would obviously represent donation rating time. There's absolutely nothing to do here. So in the any percent run, we would just go straight to
ICEY leaves the metro,
the
arrow.
the clock tower
ICEY
here.
ignores the
But in
arrow
All Bosses, we
and
actually
continues
proceed
the
to an
theater
optional
on the
area,
right. Oh,
the Marionette
the
Theater.
Yellow King
There
was
is a
performed here
ton of
before.
content here.
Awesome. ICEY enters
Best
the
up is if
theater,
you go up the stairs,
thinking to
but we
herself
won't, because
that
the boss
perhaps
is
she
over
the
here.
Oh, ICEY, you're about to take the stage.
There's a long and generally quite simple fight on this elevator leading up to the boss. No, I waited too long. By waiting as you charge, you actually increase the damage the AoE will do, but if you wait too long, if you get hit while you're charging it, and he's grabbing me, if you get hit while you're charging it, it won't do any damage at all. So it's a balancing act. It's a tough one. Next boss is Jack. Some people think Jack is the hardest boss in the game. I don't really see why. He does like to jump around a lot, there's no denying that. That's Jack. Maybe it's people playing on higher difficulty levels, I don't know. We do play on the lowest difficulty level for the speedrun because gotta go fast.
Jack, she can rest easy as she pursues Judas.
And as you pursue... Well, not pursue, I
word.
only said that word because I heard the narrator say it. As you get to some of the... not bonus content, just content this game has, you will end up in situations like this where you're in the lab that starts the game. These signify non-standard endings, and this is technically one, but we just needed to come here because Jack is a boss. The Yellow King will spawn 3 times. It's always in the same places. And this happens all the time when you play through the game, like, normally. You'll encounter various bizarre endings. Everything from music videos to demos for other games to the narrator getting shot and killed. Lots of crazy stuff. And they always end with this super vague lore being typed onto the screen by an unseen presence. This is the only one we would see in, I'll say in a speedrun, but there are 100% speedruns. I don't do that run myself and probably never will. And by the rules of this category, even though it's NG Plus and every area is unlocked, we have to go back to one we've gotten to in this run, which would be Crossroads, even though the next area we want to go to is just here.
Following the arrow to Judas's hideout, the clock tower.
Here we see Thor, and a black-armored version of Thor. They're not offering much more resistance than Thor did the first time around. I love the music, too. You can just dance to this music. Sometimes I can't help but chair dance in my seat.
ICEY enters the clock tower, a place once rich with science. ICEY, to her surprise, this room is much like the forest from earlier. Everything is fine as long as ICEY keeps following the arrow.
just see dance emojis being typed into the chat of anyone playing this.
Another familiar scene. ICEY easily soars to the exit.
Yeah, I don't think the game ever quite comes out and says it, but the idea is the big bad Judas is the master of deception, and his lair is full of all these areas that look like places you've already been. This is Ideon. He has only 1 health bar. So as I always say, hard fight lel. He's actually only vulnerable in that one spot, but that's also a spot where he can't really hit you. So it makes the fight incredibly easy. And just the style of this game. Absolutely love it. Many screens have skippable combat. That's one of the more obvious ones. You know, there have already been quite a few throughout the game to this point, of course, but that's one of the most obvious ones. Oh, I thought you were dead. That's disappointing because I would have loved to have had the energy crystals for this wave. These fights are going a little on the slow side. Nothing to get too caught up about. And you'll notice that you do get a damage buff if your combo hits 50... I believe it's 50, 80, 100, and 150 hits. It's 10, 20, and 50%, something like that. Oh. I missed a minor time save there.
All she has to do is follow the arrow, and she will
you can get off that elevator quicker than I did. Not a big deal. Death blows always give you these crystals thanks to upgrades. I have quite a few each time. And you can always use the crystals to, yeah. It's not good for these guys to spawn so far away from each other. And always use the crystals to AoE. And as I know, part of GDQ's charter, so to speak, is to introduce speedrunning to new people. I feel like this game is a really good idea for that because it is so inherently fast-paced, and because, you know, there are a few skips, so to speak, but there are no glitches. There are no skips that happen because you hit the right frame on the perfect 90th of a second, 120th of a second, sub-pixels, anything like that. No, you just go fast. You just strap in and you go fast.
By following the arrow,
so this, I think, would make a brilliant first speedrun for somebody. And I'd love for the chance to represent it as such. Just try to have as much flow as possible with your offense. Charge up these crystals because we know the Black Armored Thor is coming, as are some of his buddies. Got memed a little bit on that fight.
ICEY has finally reached the top floor and is confronted by another enemy.
It's actually possible to spare this enemy. It takes 3 minutes of the narrator berating you for not killing her, but we can't, you know, you could theoretically do it in the any % run, because it makes the boss in the next room not fight you. Can't do it in the All Bosses run.
ICEY continues forward.
And this is by far the hardest enemy in the game, which the narrator even mentions. By the way, the narration is available in English, the original Chinese, and Japanese. Sounds like a perfect potential donation incentive for me.
And by far, the most fierce enemy ICEY has ever met.
That's not even close to what I was expecting him to do. I've never seen him do Deadly Disc that quickly into the fight, but it's alright. That was a pretty good fight. Into the final area now.
It's time to end this. Judas awaits. That wicked
Question asks, are you ready? You can actually say no. And if you say no a whole bunch of times, it actually leads to one of the game's achievements.
It is time for ICEY to begin her final battle.
Alright, final boss, Judas. He has 5 health bars, but really, he's nothing to get too excited about. You just do Deadly Disc in his face, and jump if he hits you. Jump when he jumps. Yeah, getting hit by the electricity there is probably the worst thing that can happen in this fight, and even that's not so bad. Time ends on the final hit against the boss. So that's a pretty good run. That's only a few seconds off my PB. Oh. I stopped time a little early. I thought he was dead when he wasn't, but it still would have been 22:30 something. But yeah, that's ICEY All Bosses. Hope you enjoyed it.